Alright, so the first step is to remove the center vent, and it's not just the vent itself, but it's the whole piece, which includes the carbon fiber. This is on an 18 F87 M2. Yours might vary if you're talking about an F22. I'm not familiar enough to know for sure, but I do know that there's a lot of similarities. On this right-hand side, I had to pull harder than I thought, but it worked just fine. Once it pops out, you can see the metal clips go straight in. So the next thing to do is just pull two wires. There's this one here. I had to push in a little piece and then pull out. This one, I think all I had to do is pull back. And then there's a wire clip holding it there. And the piece that I didn't show here was this piece. Removing it out of the full carbon fiber is held on by these 6 or so pieces I highlighted in yellow arrows. The sections that come out, they're just easy little clips that you pull out. And so the next step, I did some test fitting to see what it looked like. I see that hole right there was holding the two halves together, the vents, one half on the left, one half on the right. Once you remove this clip, that will allow the two halves to separate. There's 3 little round retainers that I'll highlight here. There's one there. These are super simple. They don't really hold it very tightly. So there's 2 there, 1 on the other side, and then they will separate. And then the buttons in the middle are a little bit loose. So there's almost like 3 pieces, but really it's these 2 halves. That wire clip that I'm messing there in the center is really a pain. It took a little bit to get out. I did cut some of that because it was annoyingly painful. I didn't cut the wire, I cut the video, just to be clear. So I was test fitting the gauge, and I'm trying to figure out how those pieces come out. Didn't really want to break it. I'd rather disassemble than break. But I thought, what the heck? I think it's got to fit in there. So I grabbed my screwdriver and pry, and it pops up super easy. I didn't even need a screwdriver. Could have just pulled. So then I put that in there like that. And you can kind of see or hear it click back and forth, and I knew there was room for a gauge needed behind it. So those back vent guides in the back half of the section needed to go. So I decided, I didn't see a way to disassemble, so I decided to try to just break it. And I broke one piece off, and as I struggled to remove the remaining, they kind of all came out at once when I pulled the back. There, I am trying to inspect how they came out. And I did that, and then the rest of them came out. Super simple, so tossed them to the side. And now I put the gauge there, but I gotta flip it the right way. Good job. And then it fits again, and there's room to spare in the back for the gauge, which is excellent. Again, there's a little bit of a slop. And so I'm just looking some more. All the mechanical pieces work. What I was looking at is where to send the wires. I was going to send the wires out or up from the bottom side, because that's where the wires are, my sensor and the power for the gauge. I didn't want to send them straight out the back, which is where the vent and air flows, but I was just going to create a hole, and you'll see me do that here in a minute. So I'm test fitting the gauge in the gauge holder, lining it up a little bit, and I'm noticing, hey, that's quite a tight fit. So then I push it in there a little bit more. I'm like, wow, that's a really tight fit. And I'm thinking, should I push it all the way in? I'm like, yeah, I'll just push it all the way in. Then I got smart and stopped pushing on the lens. And then I pushed a little more, and you see I got about a 1/2 inch left there. And I'm like, all right, let's just do it. So I did it, and I pushed it in. I was being careful not to push the outside edge of the vent, because I figured that would be the least strong portion. And so I tried to push just the ring against the gauge, and it went on there really tight. But that's good, because then you see me toss the metal piece in the back. I didn't need that because it fits tightly. Now, I had no idea how to secure the vent or the gauge holder in the vent, because there's a bit of a gap. So my solution, after drilling a big hole in the bottom, which I should have gone slower here and used a step bit right there, I ended up cracking. I I did get a hole, but I also ended up cracking the plastic a bit. I'm glad it didn't crumble in pieces. So hindsight, use a step bit there, or gradually build yourself up. And this is where I had a small set of screws and small screwdrivers, and I decided to drill tiny holes. And there's a test fit of the hole and a test screw, and things look good. So then on the bottom inside, I drilled the hole. Shouldn't have pushed so hard here. Not a big deal really, because I didn't bottom out, thankfully. So I put one screw in there. And I got a shorter screw, and then on the bottom on the other side, I thought I was going to be done here and like 2 screws is good enough, but after I put this screw in, then it was kind of wobbling back and forth, so I needed a third screw hole, and I put it on the inside, and put a screw in there, and now it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to ever shake out. The only downside to this is you can see the screws. You can see there on the right hand side the tips stick out a little bit, but race car, so it doesn't really matter. So here I am inspecting. Everything looks great and fantastic. Pretty pleased. Now it's putting everything back together, find the 3 holes for the 3 pieces. That clip right there is the piece that I struggled to get that wire out of. That was a little bit of a pain, but in was no problem. And then I just reconnected there, snapped it in, and good as almost new. This is the adapter for the fuel pressure sender. This can go in the line, and I do show the line later on. That is the right number for the bag. The piece in the background is the wrong piece. I ordered the wrong piece. So took it off, took a look, there's 2 little O-rings in there, took the sender off. I didn't get video of that, so I just took the sender off, put it in the new one, the right one, and tightened it up, and then that is good to go. So I got the Bend Calibration filter mount and filter, and so that is what you'll see me hook up to here in a minute. When I clocked this and tightened it, I wanted to make sure that the wiring release right there that I pointed to is in the right spot, a good spot in line with the hose. So this is where you would hook up to with the Bend Calibration filter only kit. They have the ultimate kit with the sensor, the ethanol content sensor or analyzer. The wiring or the hosing would be a little bit different. This is just the filter. If you didn't have the filter, the blue line that goes horizontal there would go into the adapter. If you just wanted to run a fuel pressure sender or fuel pressure gauge, that would work. So then I hooked up the wire. I ran my wire a little unconventional because my interior is mostly stripped out. So I don't have any video of that because it probably wouldn't apply to you unless you stripped it out too. But I ended up coming up behind the gauge, or on the bottom driver's seat, and then up underneath the center console, and that's for the sensor. On the right hand side, I did the power. You see my wires there for a whole bunch of wires. I connected power to that, from that for the gauge. There you can see my access to the gauge from the back. Not convenient. You'll see me struggle with this quite a bit. It was not fun. If I were to define fun, this activity wouldn't be anywhere near it. I did have to come up through the hole. I'm glad I didn't make the mistake and send it straight through the back. So there I was test fitting the power length, and I don't know what I'm doing there because I gotta send it through the hole. So just ignore that part. Pretend I'm not doing what I'm doing right now. In a minute, I will get some senses about me. There we go. And I'll put it through the hole that I made. Now that hole ended up not being big enough, so I had to take those long needle nose pliers and pry some of the plastic away to make the hole big enough for both wires. And once I got the wires in there and connected, that was joyous. So I had a hard time connecting the wires, and I was getting frustrated. So I took this half-inch extension to try to shove the gauge out, and I didn't have any success. It was really tight in there. And so all this work made me so hungry. I started to think of my favorite dessert. And what did I come up with?
Fudge!
Fudge, yeah. So I decided to go through the hole and put it in. What I ended up having to do is bend the temperature sensor wire. It's like a stiff probe. Oh, I need to shave my back of my neck. A stiff probe there, made room for my fingers to fit, and then I got the sensor wire plugged in first. Then I managed to get the power wire plugged in as well. Once I did that, then I just reconnect that right there is the hazard light and the door unlock button, and then this one up top is for the temperature controls and so forth. So I wasn't real careful what to do with the wires back there. I just wanted to mount it, take a deep breath. Looks pretty good. So happy with that. Now let's see what it looks like. And ta-da, it's working. It's all powered. That doesn't test the sensor, that just tests the power. So we don't really know that the sensor's working, but I just tested it a little bit ago and it actually does work. So now that I got it to work, I made sure that the wires were not in the way. Tucked them away so it didn't get pinched, and then when I felt like it was in a good spot, I just shoved it straight back in, and ta-da. And while I was twisting that thing, I might have scratched up the dash a little bit, so you may want a second pair of hands to have somebody hold the whole works. So this is a GlowShift gauge. It does have fancy colors. Some people complain about them that it doesn't remember your color setting, but that's because you'd have the power not correctly hooked up and you're hooking up to a power that disappears. Last thing is to remove the plastic cover on the lens, and that is it. Fuel gauge installed.